In this section, we're going to be learning about factoring. So we're going to lay the foundation after you've done your guided reading. And we're going to look at the process of factoring about 6 or 7 problems, okay? So looking at this one, the first thing you do every time you factor is you see if there is something common across all 3 terms. These 2 terms have x's, so they're not common because he doesn't. And then there's not a number other than 1 that goes into 1. Remember, there's a 1 that I'm too lazy to write. There's a 1, a 24, and a 144. So what I want to do in my head is I want to find factors of 144 that when I add them together, they'll give me a negative 24. So notice there's a couple of hints in here. One of the hints is that this is positive, so your signs have to be the same, but they're adding up to a negative number. So your signs have to be negative. So in my head, what I do is I take factors and I say 2 times 72, and I say 3 times 48, and I say 4 times 24. 5, nope, 5 doesn't do it. 6 does it. 6 goes in. Oop, wait a minute, this is wrong, sorry. 4 times, that's going to be, hold on. 4 does go into it. Yes, it does. Give me a second. 4 goes into this 3 37 times. That's weird. Because I would have a 3 with 2 left over 36 times. See, what did I tell you? Okay, 6 goes in 24 times. 7, 8 goes in. 8 goes in 14. So basically I'm going to rip all my way down. And, well, I might as well just finish it. 8 goes into 14 once with 6 left over. So I get 8 and 18. 7 doesn't, or sorry, 9 doesn't. 9 does. 9 goes in. 9 goes into 14 one time with 5 left over, so I get a 16. 10 doesn't, 11 doesn't, but 12 does, and that gives me 12 and 12. So that's an addition of 145. This is 74. This is 51, and I get all the way down to find out that that's my 24. So ideally, you would want to do this as much in your head as possible. But the way I'm going to factor this is 2 sets of parentheses. X will always go in the first spot because it's the square root of the first term. So the square root of x squared is just x. And I found out that this is negative 12 and negative 12, so I'm going to give it a negative 12, and I'm going to give it a negative 12. So the last thing we do every time we factor is we see if there's something common. There's not. Or can I break these ones down any further? No, I cannot. Okay, so that's done. So let's try it again. I need 2 factors of negative 6. So what's the hidden message? Your signs will be different. So I'm going to make a list of the factors of 6. I get 1 and 6 and 2 and 3. When I add them together, I get a positive 1. So here's a little clue for you. If this is negative, the bigger term will take this sign. So 1 is smaller than 6. He'll be negative. 2 is smaller than 3. He'll be negative. And now I just got to search for the right answer. So I've got 6 minus 1 is 5. That's not my middle term. 3 minus 2 is 1. That's my middle term. So 2 sets of parentheses. The square root of the first goes in the first spot. And then I need a negative 2. And I need a positive 3. X plus 3 times x minus 2 is just as right. So it doesn't matter which order you put them in. So let's try another one. First thing I do every time I factor is see if there's something common. There's not x's across the board, and the only common factor is 1. So I'm done with that. I need factors of 30, 2 and 15, 3 and 10, and 5 and 6. So my signs are the same. I need them to add up to a negative number, so everything is negative. So I end up with this, gives me my negative 11 that I'm looking for. So 2 sets of parentheses. The square root of the first goes in the first spot. I need a negative 5, and I need a negative 6. So just like either one of these could be an answer, I could have x minus 6, x minus 5, and that would be just as valid of an answer. So either set is just fine. So now let's make it a little bit harder, but we're going to use the same process-ish, okay? So there's nothing common across all three terms, but I notice this time that my lead coefficient is not 1, it's 3. So I'm going to multiply the first and the last terms over here, and I get a negative 24. And for right now, my process is the same. So I need two factors of negative 24, my signs are different, that will add up to a negative 2, which means the larger number of the pair will be negative. Okay, so I've got a 1 and a 24, a 2 and a 12, a 3 and an 8, a 4 and a 6. Okay, so the larger number of the pair will be negative. Now I just need to know which set gives me the negative 2. So this is negative 23, this is negative 10, this is negative 5, this is negative 2. That's my set. So here's what's going to happen. Instead of having two different sets of parentheses, what I'm going to do is use factoring by grouping. So this is actually a 4x and a 6x. This was actually a 5 and a 5x and a 6x, but that's the shortcut. I like the shortcut, so keep the shortcut going up here. But I'm going to write the first term, which is 3x squared, followed by either one of these. I don't care. So I'm going to do a positive 4x and a negative 6x, and then end cap that thing with a negative 8. So I replaced my negative 2x with these two things, which equal negative 2x. So I haven't changed what it is. I've changed what it looks like. And now I'm going to do factoring by grouping, which means to get there, I need to factor out what's common on just the first two. I'm going to group the first two together and say, okay, what's common? Well, I can pull an x out of both of those. Okay, come over here and tell me what's common. I'm leading off negative, so regardless of what I pull out, I'm going to pull out a negative. Okay, over here I was leading off positive, so I pulled out a positive. Over here I'm leading off negative, so I'm going to pull out a negative. Well, a 2 can come out of both of those. So a negative 6x divided by 2 is a 3x, and that gives me a plus 4. Now, if you'll notice, your parentheses match. If they don't match, either it's not factorable or you've done something wrong. But I've got this chunk minus this chunk, and both chunks have a 3x plus 4 in common. So I'm factoring out that 3x plus 4. Once I factor out the 3x plus 4, what is left is an x minus 2. So for the rest of the semester, what you're going to hear me say is you're going to hear me say, tell me what is in parentheses, then tell me what is not in parentheses. So what is in parentheses is a 3x plus 4 because I factored out what's common. What was left is what's not in parentheses, which is an x minus 2. And again, you could have x minus 2, 3x plus 4, and it would be the same thing. If you would flip-flop the order here and put a negative 6x and a positive 4 here, you would have gotten this answer, which is just fine. Okay? All right, so let's try it again. I have an 8x squared plus a 3. There's nothing common across all three terms. So I'm going to multiply my first and my last, which gives me 24x squared. It's a positive 24, so my signs will be the same. And it's adding up to 10. So I've got a 1x and a 24x. I got a 2x and a 12x. I got a 3x and an 8x. And I got a 4x and a 6x. So this is the group that I'm looking for because it adds up to 10. Okay, so looking at that, write your first term down. Replace the middle term with what you just found. And then write the last term. So my first and last term stayed the same, but the middle term I replaced with what I just found, which is 10x. Okay, so I'm going to factor out what's common here. I can pull out a 4x. And that leaves me with a 2x plus 1. Be very, very careful. You're dividing. So 8x squared divided by 4x is 2x. 4x divided by 4x is positive 1. Now let's tell me what's common on the last term. The last two terms, I can pull out a 3. So 6x divided by 3 is 2x. 3 divided by 3 is 1. Now tell me what is in parentheses and tell me what is not in parentheses. So again, if you would flip-flop the order and put a 6x here and a 4x here, Then what would have been in parentheses was your 4x plus 3, and what would have been outside of parentheses would have been a 2x plus 1. You'll get the same answer. All right, second to last one. We have a negative. This is two terms. It's a binomial. So you have a negative, which is the difference. And then if you'll notice, this is a perfect square and this is a perfect square. So I'm going to do two sets of parentheses. One gets a plus and one gets the minus. That's a law. Okay, you may do a negative here and a positive here. I don't care. Okay, as long as one of them is positive and one of them is negative. So take the square root of the first one and put it in the first spot. So the square root of 4x squared is going to be 2x in the first spots. The square root of the last one is 1. And then look and see if you're done. Okay, well, I can't break this down anymore, and I can't break this down anymore, so I'm done factoring. The last one is not the difference of two squares. He is the sum of two squares, which means I cannot factor him down. He is prime. So remember, anything that has factors of just one in itself, we call as prime. So this is a prime. I can't break it down any further. So he's done. And that is it for this section.